I was going to start out by telling you to take out your pens and papers. There'll be a quiz. No quizzes tonight. I live in an old house on the corner of Main and Essex, one of the oldest houses in Garrettson. In fact, if you looked at the mortgage, the earliest entry is for 1875. In my old house are lots of old things, including me. I am of that generation that were the recipients of family treasures that still had some good life. I have a wicker rocking chair from a great aunt that was great for rocking babies, the china cabinet that my father gave to my mother as a wedding present, numerous carpets from Turkey, and a piano. The subject of my story tonight, my grandmother's piano. All of us have objects in our life that elicit memories, both good ones and bad ones. I learned to play piano as a child, taking lessons for about 5 years. First from a country school teacher, and then later from the mother of a friend. I was then and now am not a great pianist, but I've always enjoyed playing. Unlike my sister, I did not have to be encouraged to practice. It was much more fun to play the piano than milk cows. As an adult, and in college, I had few opportunities to play. The only chances I had to play were when I were on visits home. But later, when I moved to Germany after college, I went through quite a few years without playing, and also in my early years back in Garrettson. My grandmother, Henrietta, who was a strong old German who lived to the ripe age of 95, died and left a house full of furniture. And in that furniture was a piano. My mother suggested, perhaps you and Aunt Illa would like to buy that piano. And I thought this was a good idea. So at her auction, we bid the high price of $100 and bought ourselves a piano, a big dark brown upright piano. Probably no one else bid on it. So my uncle and one of his friends brought the piano in a horse trailer to Garrettson, to our rental house on 4th Street. Fortunately, the trailer was the right height so that they could back up to the door of the house, and we could, with a lot of effort, push the piano into the house. All pianos of that vintage are very heavy. For quite a few years, because I was teaching and had 2 young girls, I had very little time to practice or play the piano, but I did arrange for lessons for my daughter, Colleen, and she took lessons first from Susie Hockenstead. That winter, Attila and I bought our first and only house in Garrettson. It was mid-December when we closed, and so we decided that we would continue to rent the house on 4th Street so that we would be able to get ready for Christmas and also finish up school before having to move. Those weeks of December, every afternoon after school, I would load up my VW Bug with as many small things as I could and the 2 little girls, and we would make numerous trips back and forth to the house, bringing our things over. Finally, the only thing left in the house was the piano. It was a cold and snowy December, the last weekend in January, and I was starting to get worried. I knew that we would need a pickup and some help to move the piano, but Attila was not the kind of person that you could nag. The best I could do was a little bit of gentle nudging. Don't you think we should get that piano? His response, don't worry, I'll take care of it. It was the last Saturday in January, and I think he probably went to a wrestling match. It had gotten colder and started to snow. By Sunday, we were having a blizzard. Sunday afternoon, I decided I probably should just give up and rent the house for another month just for the piano. At that point, Attila put on his boots his parka and his cap. And I said, "Where are you going?" He said, "To move the piano." Okay. Question. Where do you go on a Sunday afternoon in January during a blizzard to find a crew to move a piano? Correct, to the bar. Of course, the bar in question was Waltz. Attila was an immigrant, but he had lived long enough to know what an important role Waltz played in the community. And he also knew the way of small towns. You may have a perfectly good TV at home and a comfortable couch, but it does not match watching a football game during a blizzard with your friends at the bar. Okay, here I must insert a disclaimer. My role was to stay at home with the little girls and wait for the arrival of the piano. So some of the details of the rest of this may not be accurate. Some of you may know them better than I do. Attila went to the bar and probably waited until halftime or between rounds of beer, recruited a group of some of the boys. Okay. Who were the boys? For Attila, anyone who was 5 years younger than himself was affectionately one of the boys. It may have been Smiley or Lover or the First or Art Jones or Gordy or possibly Jimmy Hansen or even some of the high school boys of that time. I am quite sure there was a fluid quid pro quo involved. Somehow, with a pickup, they drove to the house on 4th Street, and they had to go to the front door, so probably they drove across the lawn through the snow, and backed the truck up to the landing, and with a lot of effort, probably six of them, wrestled the piano from the living room onto the pickup. Okay, first step complete, but the piano was too long to close the tailgate of the truck. So obviously, someone would have to ride in the back of the truck so the piano would not fall out. I like to think that Attila and the others who were riding in the back of the truck holding the piano were singing as they rode down Main Street. At a certain point, a gust of wind came up, and the piano had a hinged lid, and it flew up the lid, striking Attila in the forehead. He claims to have seen stars, but thought he was fortunate not to have been thrown out of the truck. With that one small incident, they were successful in arriving at the house. But again, the same maneuver, backing up to, this time, the back door, and muscling the piano through the porch and the kitchen to the dining room. At this point, the boys left, probably to return to watching the game. Attila iced the goose egg that was forming on his forehead. The piano was home. Over the years, Attila always said, Garrettson is a good town. He knew some of our weaknesses as well, the weaknesses of all small towns, the gossip and sometimes the pettiness. But he could appreciate the generosity, the kindness, the peace, and the ability to have little adventures, whether they be road trips to away games, learning to bowl, or play baseball just a little, or moving a piano in a blizzard on a January afternoon. Today, I have a lot more time to play the piano. This spring, I finally mastered the middle section of Moonlight Sonata. My plans for the future: by the time I'm 80, I'm going to buy myself a slingy black cocktail dress and learn some jazz piano. Thank you very much.